Okay, the FAO fisheries project worked in Ayravati on four critical issues. For one thing, the co-management concept is new and nobody quite knows what it is, and this project attempted to do something. Second thing is it worked with some of the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. Third, it also tried to look into a sustainable livelihoods approach. And finally, the voluntary guidelines on small-scale fisheries are well reflected in its activities. Having done that, the project seems to have missed the sustainability implications. This is a long-term engagement, but the project ended sooner than it should have, and the future sustainability remains uncertain. Why? Because the government is changing its rules, and the fundamental basis on which the communities managed to get the project going was on access, on getting land. Sorry.
You can come back at
Yeah.
the start of sentence again.
Yeah. The reason the project is no longer is likely to become sustainable is because the government is changing its rules, and the fundamental basis on which the communities got access to the use rights and tenure for the fishing grounds in their neighborhood are no longer going to be available to them come next year. And the entire project has depended on having access to that particular water bodies, and with that taken out of the equation, the sustainability of the other activities that the project has done becomes doubtful. And on capacity building, the project, FAO project, the TCP project has done a lot of interesting work in Yangon to develop the quality control and certification and traceability systems for seafood exports, and it seems to have been appreciated by the government very much, except that the concern remains as to the extent to which the project tried to address this entire supply chain. Only the final part of the supply chain where the export processing takes place is looked after by this TCP, being a small project of course, has meant that it's a case of operation being success but the patient being dead. So that the FAO should have followed up and come up with a bigger project to cover the rest of the supply chain activities in order to make it more viable and productive for the government of Myanmar and for the seafood export industry in Myanmar. A third component where FAO could have done better was in terms of coordination and networking with other organizations working on fisheries. And unfortunately, FAO has remained conspicuous by its absence in very important initiatives like Myanmar fisheries partnerships. We think there is a potential for FAO to play a lead role in in platforms like that.
You said something on the framework at the national level on fisheries, that there is no framework at national.
Yeah, in the FAOR's office in at the moment there is no national fisheries framework to in which can reflect. Sorry. A lot of FAO has done a number of activities from the regional level, from the headquarters level, at the national level, but there is no country fisheries framework which can pull all these activities together, and so we can make sense of what is happening under what considerations. There are a lot of hit and run operations, but there is no common thread to pull them all together to make sense of what FAO is trying to achieve in fisheries in Myanmar. So the FAO, the evaluation team suggests that a common fisheries framework be designed by the country office in order that the different activities that are being undertaken in the country can be pulled together and made sense of in a more cohesive, integrated manner.
Okay. Do you think you mentioned at the beginning the success of the work with the community?
Yeah.
Do you think you mentioned it?
Yes, I think,
okay.
yeah, they've mentioned already. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So, in the area of forestry, the FAO program has done quite a lot of interesting and successful work in the areas of RED Plus, in Fleg T, and in support to community forestry through the FFF Forest and Farm Facility program. Yes, too many acronyms.
Right. Exactly.
But
Yes, because I know exactly
Yeah.
what I mean, but could you please
okay, so you know,
spell them
but
out?
then it's yeah,
Super long, I know.
no.
But make it, if you want, you can make it simple.
Then maybe we'll just go straight to community forestry then and not mention the.
But I don't know. But you can, up to you, but it is, I'm worried
Yeah,
that it is, they might have things like,
yeah. No, I agree.
because it's a public for broader,
Yeah.
public, even those who are not involved with
Yeah.
forestry.
Well, the main work has been on community forestry, so let's just focus
Okay.
on that then. So, FAO's main work in the forestry sector is focused on providing support to community forestry work through the Forest and Farm facility. It's helped to establish and also to strengthen community forestry producer groups at the local community level, and also to link them in networks at the township and the state and regional levels. It's also started to establish relationships with private sector companies in the forestry sector, particularly working in bamboo and rattan handicrafts and other forest products, so that they can add value to the market chain of the products that are coming out from the community forests. It's also supported work to ensure that if any timber is harvested from the community forests, it's recognized as being legal timber once it enters the supply chain. So if it eventually becomes made into furniture that, for example, is exported to Europe or anything else, it will be approved as legal timber. Another main area of work has been, sorry, I was going to jump into climate change already, but I didn't really say what we still need to do on the forestry stuff.
It's okay. You can tell us.
So, despite the fact that a lot of good work is already being done in forestry, there are still, of course, some gaps and some areas where FAO needs to build capacity in its program staff in country to support this work, also to find ways to really leverage a much larger level of resources to support community forestry on a much broader scale. The government has a target of achieving over 2 million acres of community forestry, so there's still a long way to go. There's also a new agenda on forest landscape restoration, so replanting degraded or destroyed forests. And in this case, the work on community forestry and forest restoration can link together, so any newly restored forests can actually be managed as community forests in the future.
Okay. Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Right. I like it when we present it as like opportunity, like why FAO needs to do this. We have successful, it has good work, but now there is still work that FAO has the capacity to do. So if you could present it like there is a potential
Yeah.
area
Okay.
of work, a big area where we can still make a difference, or
Yeah. Yeah.
or we can, adapt,
Yeah.
or we can address an area
Yeah.
that's not addressed.
Yeah.
Addressed,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Yep. So based on the good work that FAO has already implemented in forestry, particularly community forestry, there are now some really good opportunities ahead to really build on that and expand it to a much greater level of impact. So particularly in scaling up the work on community forestry to help address the government's target of over 2 million acres across the whole country, and particularly to build on the early relationships that have been developed with private sector companies to improve the value chain of the products coming out of community forests, so that at the end of the day the communities derive a much more benefit to their livelihoods and income from this work. Another area in which FAO has great opportunities to really expand its work in the country is in the area of climate change. At the global level, FAO is recognized as being a leader in climate smart agriculture. The country is now developing its climate change strategy and action plan, and obviously there's a real opportunity for FAO to really come in a big way, providing support for the implementation of the climate change strategy, particularly in relation to agriculture and food security.
Okay. Yeah. This is a bit, yeah, because you said that it has not engaged.
Okay, so do you want me to go back and...
Yeah, because
Yeah,
in this
okay.
case, it is, I mean, I am sorry.
No, it's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay.
it doesn't, you can say exactly the work of the country, but I mean,
Yeah,
I
okay.
prefer that.
Okay, yeah. No, we can do it that way. So, yeah. In the area of climate change, FAO has done some small activities at the ground level, for example, drought-tolerant species in the dry zone and so on, and some interventions through community forestry and fisheries. But at the national level, in terms of coordinating the big picture agenda and the development of climate change strategy, FAO has really not been as engaged or involved as it should be. So this is really a gap where in the future we would like to see FAO taking a much more prominent role, particularly leading the sector on climate change and agriculture, nutrition and food security, which will be a very critical area in Myanmar.
About the experience that FAO has in climate smart agriculture, so that is why you want FAO to jump in, no?
Yeah.
Can repeat it,
Yeah.
that at the national level it has not addressed, and you would like it because of the experience
Yeah.
in climate smart agriculture.
Okay. So, despite the good work on the ground in climate change, we see that at the national level, FAO has not yet engaged as meaningful as it really needs to, particularly in the development of a national strategy on agriculture. Start again.
Yes.
No, it's okay. I'll get it.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. You can just say that it has not engaged, not as it needs to.
Okay.
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 But it has not engaged, but it has the potential.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. We can do as many takes as you want. It's no problem. Despite the good activities on the ground in climate change related areas, at the national level, FAO really hasn't yet engaged at the level that's required. There is a process to develop a national strategy, and particularly a subgroup working on climate change adaptation in the agriculture sector. Now, this is an area where globally FAO has a great reputation and is seen as a leader in climate smart agriculture, and that's why we really think this is an opportunity and an area where we would like to see FAO engage much more substantially in Myanmar.
You think it is important? You think it is a message?
I think so, yeah. So in terms of climate change challenges, Myanmar is one of the countries that is considered to be most vulnerable in the world to climate hazards, including floods, including droughts, including typhoons and so on. No. Myanmar is severely impacted by a number of climate-related hazards, including floods, droughts and storms. And under all the climate change scenarios, these hazards are likely to get worse in the future. So the disaster-related risks to Myanmar from climate change will be huge. There's also the more cumulative impacts that we'll see with, for example, temperature change. On average, you can say for a 1 degree increase in temperature, rice yield may decline by 15%. And we can look at similar statistics throughout the different sectors of forestry, fishery, agriculture and so on. So the challenges are huge, and the current capacity to work on this issue is very, very limited. So again, it's an area of great need and an area of great opportunity for FAO to really get involved and support the country in this process.
Perfect. Thank you very much. If you want to say before what has been done on now.
Okay. On the land sector, I was looking at the work here in Myanmar by FAO, and there were two outstanding things. The first was the use of the voluntary guidelines on governance of tenure in land, fisheries and forests. And that document had only just been completed the year before and was used in a workshop here which kicked off land use policy work. The March 2013 VGGT workshop was held at the Capitol in Nepitor, attended by government and civil society, and the VGGT was very appropriate. The reason was that it's